I feel like fighting gamers are not given enough credit for what we do. And fighting games are like, I don't know, it's hard to explain, but fighting games are like, they're deeper than just gaming. Like, you guys know that, right? Like, there's so many levels to fighting games. Like, there's so many layers to this shit. To be able to sit here and play this and be adequate is a skill. It's something that you should be very proud of. And I've been playing fighting games for a long time, and I think that people, there's an outside like layer of fighting games, and then there's this crazy internal layer of fighting games that I feel like is not appreciated enough in the gaming scene at all. Like, what we do as gamers is deeper than aiming a gun and shooting and knowing my map well and having my team carry me. There is no team that's going to carry me. The closest thing you're going to get to that is playing a busted character, but even that's only going to get you so far, you know? Fighting games are very, very, very in-depth, and to be a talented fighting game player, imagine being one of the best. You know what I'm saying? Like, what that is, what's required of you to be one of the best. You know what I mean? I feel like there's not a lot of discussion that's had about what it takes to be a very talented fighting game player. Like, in my opinion, high-level fighting game players, or even mid-level fighting game players, because at least mid-level fighting game players, in my opinion, depending on the game at least, you got to know a little bit of what you're doing. You're not even going to get to a mid-level if you have no clue what's going on. You got to have some kind of idea of frame data and understand a little bit about what it works, how it works, you know what I mean? Fighting games are some of the most difficult games on the planet, I believe. To be good at a fighting game, like how much it takes to be able to do so, what it requires of you to be a talented fighting game player, you know? I feel like a lot of information, I feel like a lot of credit is not giving to fighting game players. And the number one reason why I feel like this is because look at the player base of fighting games, right? Look at what we're doing here. Like, you see this little box in the lower left-hand corner over here that has all that data in it? Like, you know, your active frames, your startup, all this other stuff, right? To even begin to understand what's even happening when that's going on, and to know what the math is doing and to apply it. It's one thing to understand that fighting games are math-driven, right? Like, every move, every animation, every game, I hope you guys understand, every game has frame data. You know what I'm saying? Like, every video game we touch, when you switch your gun in Call of Duty, it takes a long time to switch your gun, depending on if you have, like, I don't know if it's Sleight of Hand Pro, it's been a long time since I've played the game, but there's perks and shit you can put on to make you switch your gun quicker. If you have a heavier gun, like an LMG as a secondary, it's going to take longer to come out. If you look deep into the frame data, it takes time to switch your gun. So yes, it's a certain amount of frames that it takes to switch your weapon in Call of Duty. These kind of things are not really highlighted, especially when it comes to the math, because shooting games don't really work on that formula. You know what I mean? We're talking about a game where every move has a time period in which it starts up, how long it's active, and how long it recovers. And understanding these things and knowing how the fuck it works is like genius. Like, fighting game players are geniuses. I am a firm believer of this. I feel like you gotta be an intelligent motherfucker to get on these games and to understand the math behind it, because these are math-driven video games. People hate fucking math, but we'll get on fighting games and we'll know every frame to a fucking character's moveset, you know what I mean? I feel like fighting gamers are definitely not given the credit that they deserve, because there's so many things that go on with these things that apply to our everyday life. Like, my reaction time in, like, real life scenarios is super high. And I attest that to fighting games, because what kind of motherfucker is looking at an animation and reacting to it? We're talking about stuff that goes based on milliseconds, right? We're talking about something that comes out in 9 frames. You know how fast that is? Like, not saying somebody's reacting to 9 frames, but to even understand that there are moves in fighting games that come out even in 2D games. Like, we're talking about something that comes out at the speed of light. They got fucking 5-frame normals in some fighting games, you know what I mean? Granted, there's a certain level in which the human eye is not going to be able to react to certain moves, but to understand how this works and to be able to apply this formula in this math, I think that it's really, really interesting, and I think that fighting game players are not given enough credit. And the number one way I can prove this is just because look at the player base, you know, when it comes to fighting games. Like, Street Fighter and Tekken are like some of the main games, I'll say. Street Fighter even more so, where it's like the numbers are there. You know what I'm saying? But I feel like a lot of people that even watch Street Fighter on a casual level don't realize how much math is going on there. Like, when I'm fighting someone, people are like, yo, Emery, how do you pick up games so quickly? And I'm not saying I'm good at Tekken 8. I'm not saying I'm good at any fighting game. Except for DOA, I'm nasty at that. But I have a basic understanding of fighting games, and I've been playing them for over 20 years. So, with that said, when I get into a fighting game, the first thing I'm looking for is what are my plus moves on block. I'm going to learn what my plus moves on block are, because when I fight these low-ranked motherfuckers, they're not going to know better. I'm not beating them because I'm good at Tekken. I'm beating them because I understand fighting games and how they work. I could very well get scrubbed out by somebody because I don't know the math. When you don't know the math, you're going to get bodied. You know what I'm saying? So think about how much time it would take for a person to sit here and really grasp the idea. Have you guys ever tried to explain fighting games to your friends before? Like, when they're like, oh yeah, I had a friend of mine one time, like, oh yeah, all you guys do is button mash. Like, y'all know that's what they think we're doing, guys. Did you guys know that people that look at fighting games that don't understand them think that we're just mashing buttons and there's no strategy behind it? You guys know that, right? Like, people look at our craft as fighting game players and think that we're just mashing headbutting our controller and don't realize that everything we're doing, some of y'all motherfuckers are, but they don't realize that everything that we're doing is calculated. Everything that we're doing, we're taking risks because we know the math behind stuff. And it's really an interesting concept, really in general, just to be a fighting game player. Like, all of these games work on math and numbers. So my running 2 is +5. If I go in a ranked match right now and I got a motherfucker that doesn't know that that's +5 and know that every attack I do after that is 5 frames quicker, meaning he's 5 frames slower, I'm going to abuse him. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to literally abuse him for that. And fighting games, I feel like, are some of the greatest games in the world because they keep your mind sharp. And you constantly have to think, especially if you're playing them at an intermediate level. Like, it's all numbers. It's all a number game. Yeah, man. I think that fighting game players need to give themselves more credit for what they do and for what we do. Because there's a lot of thought and there's a lot of practice and a lot of discipline that goes into this. You know what I'm saying? Nah, this dude literally just tried to come in my stream and tell me to stop doing something. Who the fuck are you talking to, bro? Are you out of your fucking mind? Like, to be able to outsmart your opponent, like, when you outplay somebody in a fighting game, you got to think about how personal this is. When you sit down at a monitor at an offline tournament next to a player, if you beat him, you're in his head. You're literally sitting next to a person. There's no map. There's no teammates that are going to carry you to victory. If you beat your opponent in a fighting game, it's you that's winning. You're literally hitting them and thinking better than them at that time. You're guessing better than them. Like, your knowledge is better than theirs. Your situational awareness is better than theirs. You know what I'm saying? Fighting games are fucking sick, man. And a lot of shit goes into it. There's levels to this shit. You know what I mean?